What's up everyone, Tank Top Tony back for another meta video. Today's video is going to be all about the close range meta. Before we jump into that, I want to bring some attention to this. So this is a charity stream that I'm going to be taking part in later tonight. It's to support men's mental health, which I think is an amazing thing to support in general. It's kind of stigmatized and it really shouldn't be something that I personally struggle with. So I'm really looking forward to helping out with this charity stream. So I'll be live at 5 p.m. Pacific tonight after this video goes live. Over at twitch.tv/TrueGameData live. So hopefully I'll see you there to help support this cause. We've got one final close range meta video for Warzone 1. Basically what I did is I took the previous updates meta table that I created to help find the close range meta, and then I updated that with the new nerfs and buffs for all the different guns, added a couple different weapons, changed up the view of the table a little bit and changed up some of the columns. But basically we've got the weapons that had the best time to kill, because I think that's really the first thing you should look at for a close range gun, and what's going to be meta is the time to kill, because it's a lot easier to hit your shots. Recoil is not as important. Obviously there's other really important things like mobility, sprint to fire time, things like that, but in general the SMGs are all relatively close in sprint to fire time. So I start with the time to kill. There's no perfect way to do these comparisons, but I try to get as close as I can to what makes sense. So basically how I do it is I use TGD. I go to the best stat calculator. This is an extremely powerful tool if you know how to use it correctly. You can literally add all of the SMGs onto your comparison, select what you want to be looking at. So I look at time to kill, combination shot percentages. So it has those standard shot percentages that I always use. Then you can select the range at which you want the time to kill for all these different weapons. So I usually do like 5 meters to look for the close range TTKs. And I'll just generate that list. It takes some time because this is a massive calculation. It's like 60, 70 SMGs, and then it literally looks at every combination of attachments for those SMGs to find those time to kills. So it takes a little while to calculate, but once it does that, you can sort it by TTK, see all the different combinations of weapons and how they work out. So it just finished calculating. You can go through this and see all of the different attachment combinations that lead to a 498 millisecond TTK for the Mark 05. And you can just look through all the different pages in order and see the best time to kill for all these different weapons. Then as soon as you find one that you want to add, like say I wanted this recoil booster, rapid barrel, 64 Nambu, and hollow point PPSH, I can literally add it to my comparison immediately, straight into the comparison charts, and it's just really simple to find really the best options, the meta options, very, very quickly using this. So super powerful. I just wanted to highlight that. I know Warzone's down a little bit on traffic right now, but all of these features are going to be available for Warzone 2 as soon as we can get all the data. So I just wanted to highlight that. This also does all of the different stats, so it's not just time to kill. You can do DPS, pretty much any stat, hip fire, tac sprint, ADS, firing, strafing movement, pretty much any stat you can think of is on here, and we'll just be adding more and more to that as we go. I've got some really, really cool ideas for this down the line, but for now, as it is, it's already just really, really powerful. Back to the chart, that's how I start, as I look for the best time to kill weapons and basically add those to the list. So we've got Type 100 Sten, PPSH 41 from Vanguard, the Armaguerra in a bunch of different cases. The Blixen is on here as well. CX9 got a little bit of a buff, so that's on here now too. Wellgun Marco, RA25 got a pretty significant nerf, really massive neck shot nerf. It used to be 1.7 multiplier to the neck, which was the same as the head. Now it's down to 1.1, which is the same as the chest. So that did actually affect the time to kill quite a bit. But as far as columns go, we've got the required attachments to get that time to kill. So this is like the TTK area here. So we've got the close range TTK, the first drop off, mid range TTK, second drop off, and then the long range TTK. And then we've got the weighted average time to kill out to 14 meters, which I think is a pretty good measure of an SMG's performance in terms of its kill potential. I don't really love the weighted average thing because it's not a real time to kill. Like, you're not ever gonna, well, it is if the damage range goes all the way out. So for the Type 100, 480 millisecond time to kill out to 17.5 meters. So the average time to kill over 14 meters is 480. So for things that have the same TTK for the whole range, it is a real time to kill, but that's only a couple of these guns. So that's the one thing I don't like about it. You're not actually gonna get this number, but it does provide you with sort of just a realm of the performance, the overall performance of the weapon in that whatever distance you decide to make the weighted average over. So I've started to use that more. I think it's a good metric. We're going to bring that to TGD pretty soon. Then we've got the accuracy. So this is my rough accuracy at 30 meters with these guns, because sometimes you have your SMG out, you need to hit your target, and they're a little bit further than you'd want them to be with an SMG. So it's still important that these guns are accurate. In an ideal world, all of your engagements would be, inside 15 meters, 14 meters, but sometimes they just aren't. Sometimes you have to engage someone a little bit longer than that. Then we've got the mag size, fire time, and damage per mag. I think all three of these are important. Fire time is how long the mag will last if you hold the trigger down the whole time, and then damage per mag is the total damage that number of bullets will do. So sometimes I find that there'll be a little bit higher damage per mag, but the fire time is really low, and just not having very much time to get back on your target without running out of ammo, I can find is sometimes just as important as damage per mag. So that's why I include all three of those. Why not? Didn't take too long. And then we've got the fire rate, RPM over here. Higher RPM is always better, but that needs to be balanced with having good enough damage per mag. So if you have really high RPM, generally you're going to run out of ammo really quickly, and the mags will just not go as far. So it's important to consider RPM with the magazine information. So I'm just going to start going through these from the bottom up. So after the RA225 nerf, this is still the best version of the gun. Rapid barrel recoil booster with the default. I believe it has a 50 round or a 55 round mag. 55 round, so that's over here. With hollow point, unfortunately, the TTK is not quite as good now. It's 657. Good damage range out to 11 meters. Mid TTK is not great. Long TTK is not great. So that leads to it being in last place in this list of guns, but it still made the list. Obviously, there's 50 other SMGs that aren't even on this list, so it's still relatively competitive, but it's not super accurate. Doesn't have great time to kill. There's just better options. The Marco, a lot of people have been thinking the Marco is going to sneak back into the meta, but it really just doesn't compete after the nerfs that it got. It does have great mobility, great movement still. It still has the best movement of any gun, but the time to kill is not great, and the damage range is really short, leading it to be the second worst weighted average time to kill. And you can see from the top to the bottom, it's only, besides the Type 100, if we ignore the Type 100, it's about 600 milliseconds up to 681, so that's really not very long. That's from the fastest on this list to the slowest on this list is only 80 milliseconds different. That's really not that much different. So you can run any of these guns. These are all going to be competitive. If one feels like it just hits more shots and just works better for you, that is completely fine. They're all going to be good weapons on this list. These are the fastest of the fast for time to kill, and that's a good starting point. So I don't want to say that like these are bad. It's not like the RA and the Marco are bad. I do just think there's some slightly better options. But like I said, they're on the list. So there's 50 guns that aren't on the list. These ones at least made the list. Next up, we have the well gun. So this is the well gun with just the default magazine, default caliber ammunition. With recoil booster, hollow point, has 620 millisecond TTK in that first range. Pretty long damage range out to 11.2. Then the second drop off's at 15.2. 656 is its weighted average across 14 meters. This is going to be the column we're going to look at the most because this is a lot of information to digest. Super easy to control. You can see my accuracy rating 90%. You can hit almost all your shots with the well gun. It's just a great all-around weapon. Has huge damage per mag, biggest damage per mag on this list. Slower RPM, so it's going to be a slower firing gun compared to a lot of these other ones. But it's just so easy to use. It makes up for not having a great time to kill with being super accurate and great damage per mag. CX9 got a buff in this patch, so this is just the CX9 with monolithic suppressor. There are, besides the hollow point magazine, there's no other damage modifying attachments since it's a Modern Warfare gun. So it has really long damage range, 14 meters, 637 TTK, and then the weighted average is 635, so it's about 20 milliseconds faster than the well gun. Going to be harder to hit your shots than the well gun for sure. It's going to have slower mobility because it's a Modern Warfare gun. It also only has a 50 round mag and it shoots really fast, so the RPM is up at a little bit over 1,000. So with that RPM and 50 rounds, it has one of the smaller damage per mags and fire times on this list, so it's just going to be kind of difficult to use, but it is semi-competitive in terms of time to kill and damage range. The PPSH-41 from Vanguard, so there's two of those on here. I'm actually just going to briefly talk about this one. This is with the rapid barrel versus the one that's higher up the list has the 230mm Kovalevskaya barrel. That's the one with the hip fire. So really, rapid barrel is not even worth talking about because the 230mm barrel is just better. So I'm just pretty much going to skip this one. They're very similar, just the 230mm is just going to have much better hip fire and a little bit better time to kill. So we'll get up to that in a second. The Blixen has phenomenal movement speed. It's one of the most mobile SMGs in the game. It also has pretty good time to kill with this Johnson barrel. So the Johnson barrel removes the last damage drop off. That's why these are both not available, the second drop and the far TTK. So that leads to having a pretty competitive TTK, good damage range. Out to 12.2 meters, we get 602 milliseconds time to kill. That's really fast. So the weighted average is 628. Very good. The Johnson barrel does kind of mess up the recoil a little bit, makes it a little hard to use. But you get huge damage per mag, great mobility, long damage range, good time to kill. It's a pretty competitive weapon for like an all-round sort of SMG. Next up, we've got the two Armagueras. These are the ones that I've been recommending for a long time. I mean, this has been like 3 of these videos in a row. They've been standouts to me. So we've got same exact build, just one has the 550mm barrel, one has the short barrel. Short barrel is the ADS movement speed barrel, so the TTKs are exactly the same with these two. They have a very competitive weighted average of 618 milliseconds, getting really close to that 600 number now. You can see that even with the short barrel, I gave it 75% accuracy at 30 meters for my own personal testing, and that's pretty accurate. That's one of the more accurate guns on the list, and you get insane strafe speeds. So the Arma, the reason the Arma is the best option for ADS strafe is because you can actually use this short barrel and still get really good time to kill. So the Sten can get these really nice time to kills, but you have to use the rapid barrel to get that. Whereas with the Arma, just the default no barrel gives you these really good time to kill. So that's why you can use this for ADS strafe builds a little more successfully than most of the other ones. But if you want it to be just laser accurate, the 550mm barrel with these same attachments, same TTK, really competitive, just laser accurate. It's like comparative to the well gun for me, which is a super accurate SMG, which means anytime someone pops up at 30 meters, I can just beam them, no problem. I still think this is probably the best gun for most people on this list. There's one other standout that we're going to talk about in a second, but huge damage per mag, relatively good mobility, hits really hard, really accurate. It's just super easy to use gun, and I think for most people it'll stand out. We've got the Arma with the body 315 CII barrel, so this basically makes the recoil really bad. I really wouldn't recommend this anymore. It used to give it a better time to kill, but after the recent nerfs to the Arma, it doesn't, at least with my combination shot percentages, doesn't even give it a better time to kill than either the short barrel or the Emerito. So I just wouldn't even recommend this one at all anymore. Next up, PPSH-41. This is the 230mm. This is the hip fire barrel that also increases fire rate. So that in combination with the Nambu 64 round mag, still fantastic. Amazing time to kill up close. It doesn't have very good damage range, but it makes up for that by having really good 646 millisecond time to kill in that mid damage range. And then also only 738 out in the longest damage range. So even though it has really short drop-offs, the time to kill out at range for an SMG is still really good. So that's why it has a really good weighted average of 607. It's still going to be really good, but with the reduced mag size down to 64 bullets and just a little bit of the other nerfs, it's not quite as good as it was, but it's still going to be by far the best hipfire option. So if that's what you're looking for, still a standout weapon. It's not going to feel a whole lot different than it did before the patch. Unfortunately, I know it was pretty oppressive. People didn't love the PPSH. It's not very good at range. The recoil is kind of tough to control. But as far as hipfire goes, it's going to absolutely melt people. Next up, we have what I think really stands out right now, and that is the Sten. So I talked about the Arma with the 550mm barrel. This has been a standout for me for a long time. After the recent nerfs to the Arma, besides the awkward magazine getting in your face when you're tack sprinting that the Sten has, I think it is the best all-around SMG right now in the game. You get out to almost 13 meters of that first drop-off with a phenomenal 569 millisecond time to kill, and that leads to the second best on this list's weighted average time to kill of 581. It's super accurate, easy to control, not quite as easy as the Arma, not quite as easy as the Wellgun, but it has great strafe speed. It's very controllable. You can build this basically completely for strafe speed, and it's still going to be able to hit your shots at range if you ever have someone pop up a little bit past where you should have your SMG out. So the Sten really stands out to me as one of the absolute top weapons right now. It's held back a little bit by its mag size and damage per mag. You only get 1660 damage per mag compared to like the Arma with 2100. And like I said, that magazine kind of gets in the way of the screen when you're tack sprinting. So because of those reasons, I still think for most people, they're going to prefer this Arma. But if you're looking for a little bit better time to kill, a little bit more damage range, then the Stens could be the option for you. Then last up, Type 100. They've basically not touched this since Vanguard came out, and I don't really know why that is. It has phenomenal time to kill, like just so much better than everything else. Everything else, 480 milliseconds, ridiculous damage range out to 18 meters, and then in the mid damage range, it still has a good time to kill. Far damage range, still a good time to kill. It's a little less accurate. It's got the small mag. That's the thing that holds it back, is the small mag. It's really difficult to use, but I think it's worth trying to master and worth trying to learn how to get those reloads off mid-fight. If you don't let the ammo fully run out, so if you only use part of your mag, so like 35 of the 36 bullets, and then you reload, the reload is much quicker. So that's kind of a skill you can learn, is use most of the mag to get like one down, and then get off a sleight of hand reload without a fully empty magazine. And you can really use this gun. I use it in quads all the time. It's definitely doable. You just have to learn how to kind of play around that small mag, and it's just a phenomenal gun. So quick summary: solos, duos, even trios and quads, the Type 100 with rapid barrel, recoil booster, Russian 36, and hollow point is insane how fast it kills, insane how much damage range it has. You just have to learn how to play around that small mag. That's really the standout weapon right now. And then for like an all-rounder, easy to use gun, the Sten with rapid barrel, recoil booster, hollow point, really easy to use. A little smaller mag gets in your face when you sprint, but it's super easy to use, really good time to kill. And then for another comparable, slightly easier to use, no issues with the mag, would be the Arma with the Imerito, recoil booster, 64 round mag, vital. And then if you want a really strafey gun, either the Sten with this same build with strafe attachments besides that, and then the Arma with the short barrel is going to be the fastest strafe, but it's going to have a little bit worse time to kill, a little bit worse range than that Sten. So those are going to be the four that I think really stand out right now. Obviously, if you want hipfire, PPSH is still going to stand out for the hipfire king. It just melts people. Crazy fire rate, over 1300 RPM fire rate. So it doesn't matter if one bullet misses here and there, because the next one fires so quick that super forgiving. So really, those are the 4 or 5 guns that I think really stand out right now. It's not nearly as open meta as long range, but it is still a little bit open. Like I said, any gun on this list is going to be fine. I'm just trying to find the ones that really stand out above even the best of the best. So these are already the best, but then narrowing it down to like 4 or 5 that are the best of the best. On to some recommended builds. So we're going to start with the Type 100, but real fast. If you guys like my content and you watch all my videos, be sure to subscribe. Usually about 30-40% of you are not subscribed watching. Really helps me out, doesn't cost you anything. Also drop a like on the video. But enough of that. I hate asking for that kind of stuff. That's why I don't do it very often, but always appreciate it when you guys support. But anyway, on to the Type 100. So like I said, this is the TTK king for sure. It also has crazy damage range for some reason. So the attachments that are required to get that TTK would be the recoil booster, rapid, the Russian short 36, and then hollow point. So those are the 4 that we have to have pretty much to really get the good time to kill. It's a good weapon even without those, but it stands out above the rest by far when you put those 4 specific attachments on there. The recoil is pretty bad on this, so when I usually build this for, it depends on who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to someone that really doesn't like to control recoil, like I have friends that play on controller that just hate dealing with recoil at all. So if I was going to do that, I would put the slate reflector on there. I would use hand stop. I would use hatched grip. And then for stock, it's pretty much standard to use this folding grip. So this hurts your sprint to fire and your hip fire a little bit, but it really helps with your ADS movement and it helps with that initial firing recoil. It's just a really good stock all around. I pretty much use that on all of my builds for this gun. And then perk wise, I usually just use sleight of hand because I'm usually playing trios and quads. If you're playing solos, you can pick a different perk. But sleight of hand, like I said, if you don't fully empty the mag, you can reload this thing in like less than a second. Like it fully reloads all 36 bullets in less than a second if you leave just 1 or 2 bullets in the mag. So that's kind of what I've gotten good at, is downing one person with not the full mag and getting a quick reload off before the other team even knows what's happening. And then I've got one person down and a full mag that I can down at least one person, maybe 2 people. Perk 2, you can use what you want. I usually use quick on pretty much all my SMGs. So if you're someone who hates recoil, this would be how I'd build the Type 100. I don't really play it this way. I usually build it for nearly full strafe. So I'll use the compact underbarrel. And then grooved is what you usually use, but the ADS time on this thing is already pretty bad. And grooved seems to hurt it quite a bit when stacked with the other attachments. So instead of grooved, even though I'm going for a strafey build, I usually use leather. So this actually helps the ADS time and also helps that aim walking movement speed. So it's not going to be as strafey as it would be with the grooved. But that ADS benefit really makes up for it, in my opinion. And then because this is already the ADS movement stock, we don't have to change the stock. So this would be the build for ADS movement. And you can kind of hybridize any of these. So you could make this if you're someone that likes really high movement speed, you could use the Mark 6 skeletal and taped grip. So then you've got really good movement. I wouldn't recommend using the skeletal stock, even though it helps your movement speed, because it's going to hurt that recoil, and the recoil is already going to be really bad on this. So I would just stick with the folding grip rear stock. But basically that's how you build these guns. It's either recoil, it's either strafe speed, or it's movement speed. So those are kind of the three main categories that you can build these Vanguard SMGs. And if you want some combo of those, like if you like having a little bit of strafe but you still don't like the recoil, then just combine some of these attachments. And the ones that I showed tend to be the best for each individual category. So just combine those attachments however you want. On to the Sten. So the Sten, like I said, I really think is the best all-around SMG right now, but it has some like intangible downsides, like the mag getting in your face when you're attack sprinting. That makes it really hard to see people mid-fight. There's a lot of movement and stuff like that. So stats-wise, I think it's the best all-around SMG, but in practice, I think the Arma is going to be probably better for most people. But the attachments you need to use with this to get the good time to kill are recoil booster, rapid barrel. You don't need this mag, but this is the only mag that makes sense. So the 9mm 50-round drum mag, and then the Sten really has, like I just talked about with the Type 100, how it has lots of recoil, so you kind of have to keep that in consideration when you're building it. The Sten does not have a lot of recoil, so you can build this however you want, and it's going to be phenomenal after those three attachments. So hollow point's also a good attachment on this. It can actually affect those shots to kill in certain situations, so generally I would use hollow point. And it has long enough damage range that hollow point doesn't hurt that much. So the way I build this usually, I love strafe builds both on controller and mouse and key. Because of rotational aim assist, I think strafe builds are generally probably the best way to go on controller. So we'll just start with a strafe build here. It's just the same build as the Type 100. We're gonna use grooved on this actually, because the ADS times aren't nearly as bad on the Sten as the Type 100. So grooved instead of leather. And then the Gawain custom stock. This is the same exact stock as the Type 100. Helps with initial firing recoil and really speeds up your ADS movement speed. So all those things combined. You can use steady if you want a little bit more, but there's some other good perks here. So acrobatic is another good perk for movement speed. Sleight of hand's also going to be good on this in trios and quads because, like I said, it has a 50-round mag, but it doesn't put out that much damage with those 50 bullets. So steady, acrobatic, sleight of hand, all three great options. Because we're going for a strafe speed build right now, I'm going to say steady. Perk 2, pretty much always use quick on the SMGs, and then optic, you can pick whatever optic you want. I use slate reflector. But yeah, this is one of the best guns in the game for sure. And then you can just swap these attachments up for movement speed attachments if you want it to be built for movement speed. It doesn't really need help with recoil, so unless you wanted to use it as like a sniper support, then you could put some recoil attachments on it to increase that effective damage range. But phenomenal gun, love using it. Onto the Arma. So the Arma, like I've said, has been standing out for couple months now. It's been one of the best guns, if not the best gun, so that's still the case. So we're going to do recoil booster. I prefer the 550mm barrel. The precision barrel is still really popular. This hurts your body damage but increases headshot damage. I don't like that inconsistency that brings in. It also helps with recoil a bunch, but I prefer just to have that default damage profile with the 550mm barrel. I just feel like that works better for me. It is going to hurt your movement speed more so than the precision, so there are some more downsides to it, but I just don't like the way the damage values work out with the precision barrel, so that's why I stick with the 550. So this is what I would use for any sniper support build, or anyone that just doesn't like to deal with recoil. I generally just use that barrel myself. Then I always use the 8mm Curse 64-round mag. This got nerfed down to 64 rounds from 72 or 71. Not a big difference because it doesn't shoot that fast. And the recoil is super manageable. So this mag actually increases the recoil, but the barrel balances that out pretty nicely. So depends on what you want. Like I said, I love strafe builds. If you're on controller, I think rotational aim assist is super powerful, and the more strafe speed you have, the more you can kind of dance around enemies while taking advantage of that. And I love it on mouse and key as well, so it's not just a controller thing. But yeah, I generally run this, and then I'll just build full strafe speed from there. ADS time's not bad on the Arma, so we don't need to use the leather. If you do want faster ADS, though, you can use the leather. So grooved or leather, both great options for a strafe speed build. The skeletal stock tends to be the stock that people use with this, just again, because it helps with initial recoil and helps with that strafe speed. And even though it hurts your sustained recoil, it doesn't really matter because this thing's so accurate. You're going to hit your shots anyway. Slate reflector is my favorite optic. As for perk, steady if you're going full strafe speed. If you're doing something like a sniper support or you just want even less recoil, hard scope's a great option. Vital is also really good to get that TTK down. It's one of those guns that using Vital actually can affect the shots to kill in rare occasions. It only hurts your recoil about 5%, so it's not a bad choice. In general, I use Vital on this. Perk 2, pretty much always quick. So this thing's amazing, one of the best guns in the game. As far as ammunition, I usually use subsonic. I like to stay off the mini-map. I think that's pretty powerful. Yeah, generally just a little bit easier to use than the Sten, but very, very similar. And then if you wanted to go full strafe, you just swap this barrel for the short barrel. This will have a lot of recoil though with this higher caliber mag, the Kurz mag. There's going to be quite a bit more recoil with this. So in general, most people are going to prefer just to run either the precision or the 550mm. Okay, and last up, I'm going to cover the PPSH. So this is the hipfire king for sure. And in order to get there, we need the Kovalevskaya 230mm barrel. So this gives you great hipfire, increases the fire rate, and hurts your recoil, hurts your aim down sight speed. So it's trying to push this gun to being only hipfire. And then magazine-wise, you need to use the Nambu 64-round mag. This is going to help with that recoil, help with that fire rate. Kind of brings that recoil back down a little bit from the Kovalevskaya, but not as much as the barrel hurts it. And then for muzzle, almost always you'd use recoil booster, but recoil booster now actually hurts your hipfire a little bit. So you're getting like a 5% better time to kill. So that's going to be like 25 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds better time to kill using this versus like a suppressor. So actually in this case, because the recoil is really bad with the PPSH, I think that it might even be worth swapping to the oil can suppressor. You're going to get a little bit more damage range, better recoil, and it's not going to hurt your hipfire, which you're going to be doing a lot of the time with this gun. So if just one more bullet hits that wouldn't have hit using the oil can versus the recoil booster, your TTK with the oil can is going to be better. So I think I would recommend the oil can silencer. Underbarrel, if we're going for full hipfire, generally the Carver is what you'd recommend here. So the ADS time is going to be pretty bad on this thing because you'll see a lot of these attachments are hurting ADS time. But this helps with recoil and hipfire. So those situations where you've got your PPSH out and there's somebody a little bit further away, that's going to be a great attachment to have because we want to get that recoil down. As far as the ammunition goes, the damage range is so short on this thing already. I don't love putting hollow point on it, but if you're really mostly going to be hip firing, hollow point would be a great attachment to have because you can't control where you're aiming, so you're not going to be able to only hit chest shots. Like you're going to hit some leg, you're going to hit some arm. So hollow point definitely would be a good attachment if you're going to be getting right up in people's faces and always hip firing. For myself, I don't do that often. I play every now and then I'll do that when I need to, but I try to play more positioning and things like that. So really there's not a lot of great other options besides like lengthen to just get a little bit more bullet velocity. It's just like a straight up positive. Frangible doesn't really do that much, doesn't help that much. FMJ is not going to be a big deal. You're not going to be shooting through stuff very often. So really just pick what you want here. I mean, if you're running it as an SMG that's all hipfire based and you're really pushing people hard, then yeah, hollow point. But I just hate how much that hurts the damage range when you already have really low damage range on this gun. Like I said when I was covering it though, even though it has short damage range, the mid damage range and the far damage range still have good time to kill. So it's not that big of a deal. Rear grip, if we're going for pure hip fire, then we're going to want something like the Pine Tar grip. Again, this is going to hurt your aim down sight speed again. So the ADS time is going to be very poor on this thing. But I still think it's the right option because we do want that recoil control as well. So in those situations where you have to ADS, I think that's going to be really helpful. As far as stock goes, if we're going for hip fire, really remove stock is going to be the one that helps with hip fire the most. It's just going to hurt that recoil a lot. It does help with your movement, sprint to fire speed, so it's a great attachment. But if you can't handle the recoil when you do that for longer engagements, then probably something like the Zach folding or the Kovalevskaya skeletal, that would be a really good option as well because it's going to help your movement speed, let you close those distances faster, but it is going to hurt your recoil. Probably not quite as much as the remove stock though. So I would say between these three, depending on how you're going to play the gun, I would usually use the remove stock, but in some cases I might want to use the skeletal stock. Optic, again, personal preference. I like the slate reflector. Perk, Pretty much you're going to be using this for hipfire mostly, so usually you're going to want fleet so you can, you know, close those gaps to the target faster, get in that hipfire range, and then quick for pretty much all SMGs. So that's going to be like the ideal hipfire PPSH. It's going to have slow ADS. It's not going to be great at range, but that's really not the point of the gun. The point of the gun is to be good at hipfire. And if you want that 5% TTK instead of a little bit more damage range and a little bit better recoil, then just swap oil can back to recoil booster. All right, that does it for the SMG meta video, the final one for Warzone 1. I'm super excited going into Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2. I've heard a lot of things have been changing about Warzone 2 behind the scenes that we haven't publicly been told yet. And pretty much all the things I've heard are things that I am very happy about. So I am much more looking forward to Warzone 2 than I was when I saw what it was at the COD Next event with all the creators playing it. I think there's a lot of hope for it. I think it could end up being really, really great. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.